you guys doing? We all right to start early, Corey? Okay. You guys good to go?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt. Yeah.
Just give us an update, if there is one, on Brock Purdy negotiations. Where does that stand right now?
Yeah. We have started negotiations. We're talking. I won't go into negotiations like always is our stance. Want Brock to be our quarterback as long as we're here and beyond, and we'll leave it at that. I think the final thing, there's no guarantees that we get something done, but my experience has been when both sides are motivated, there's ample opportunity to do so, and we've been able to do that. So,
John, even though Brandon was only there for one season, what was his impact on the defensive staff, and how do you see that transitioning to him being a defensive coordinator again for the Saints?
Brandon Staley?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, we brought Brandon in for a reason, because of the regard we held him in his football mind. And it wasn't our best year, but I think we saw just that. Brandon is he's got a great football mind. He's got a good way of communicating, and we really enjoyed the opportunity to work with him. I think the Saints, really got a good one. Good decision by Mickey and Kellen and everybody there, and I wish them well.
What was the situation with Brian Griese? What did he
Yeah.
do to you guys?
So Griese, when he committed, kind of an outside the box thing that Kyle, had always had, thought of Griese, man, he'd be a great coach. And he approached him. I think Griese was in a different world, and he had given it some thought on the front end. And at the time, he gave us a 3-year commitment. He's a very principled guy. I think, as often does, I think family and certain other things, I don't want to speak for Brian, but other things were pulling at him, and respect that he made a tough decision, but one he thought was best for him and his family.
The decision was what?
To step away. Yeah. No, I think to take some time, and we'll see where it goes. I don't want to speak for Brian, but we had good conversations. It's all good. It was just a family decision that he made.
It seems like there was a full court press to bring Robert Saleh back. How excited are you guys to have him back?
It's awesome to have Saleh back. Felt like he never left, to be honest. You get very close with folks when you work with them as much as we do. And Saleh brought a great deal when he was last here. I think he's even better now with the experiences he's had. And it's a welcome sight to have him back. The energy that he brings, the expertise that he brings, the leadership he brings. We're very happy to have Robert and his growing family. That has grown quite a bit since we last left. I think number 8 on the way, and happy for Sanaa and Robert. And we love their family. We love what Robert brings. And I remember meeting with him in my backyard when Kyle asked me, hey, I want you to interview this guy. I think he'd be a great DC for us. And he had me from that moment on.
How big of a hand did Robert have in bringing Brant Boyer from the Jets to the special team spot?
I think he was a great reference. We had a lot of good special teams interviews. It's not something you look forward to doing every offseason, but we had an opportunity. Kyle was kind enough to let me or ask me to sit in a lot of them, to meet with a lot of really talented people. And, Brant was a guy that the people who we hold in high regard in the special teams world, everybody kept saying he was in that list of people we should talk to. I think it helped to talk to Robert. It helped to talk to guys like Jeff Ulbrich, who worked with him. And then most of all, to sit down, hear his vision for our special teams group and get his thoughts. And he's been a great contribution already.
When you look at the college football landscape, how much has changed, even from like maybe when you were coming out?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how NFL ready you thought you were when you were coming out, but now they get nil money. Now they get transfer portals. Now there's a lot of different areas to evaluate guys. Do you see more older guys coming out that are more NFL ready, or yes and no, the experiences they're having in college and may or may not make them?
Well, I would tell you, we're still kind of in that Wild West. There's so many new things happening in college football. And so, my hope is that over time you get guardrails and we get this to the right place. It's, we sit in these interviews with these kids. We're fortunate enough to have them. It's great to learn about them, but when you hear them, like, my agent and I made a decision. Wait, you're not supposed to have an agent. Yes, you do have agents, and high school kids have agents. So it's a different world. One of the advantages I think we get is a lot of these guys now have had money in college, and oftentimes you got to make mistakes to learn. Sometimes they've made their mistakes, and hopefully they're a little better equipped. We used to get them when they've never had money, and all of a sudden they have money, and they got people asking them for money, and you should do this investment. Maybe they're a little more battle tested by the time they get to us. It's one perspective. I try to be an optimist, and that is one thing that we've seen that can be a positive.
Have you talked to Trent
ready
Williams?
were you?
How NFL?
How about?
I was.
How ready do you think you were?
I was a position switch my junior year, so I was new to DB. The Bucs didn't think I was very prepared because it took me 3 years to become a starter. So fortunately, it all worked out.
Have you talked to Trent Williams recently, and is he definitely playing football this season?
Trent's playing, and he's ready, and I think he's really motivated to come back. And when you're that's rarefied air that Trent lives in, and when you're a player that has experience playing at those heights, you don't want to play unless you're playing at that level. And I think that's where Trent's at, and I think we're going to see a real motivated Trent Williams to come back and have a great year, and that's a good thing for us.
Going off of the age and the new college football landscape, what is your kind of opinion on younger players having a higher ceiling compared to older players? What's your kind of take on that? Do you feel like older players can still have a higher ceiling than you?
Yeah. There's some teams that really have a philosophy of, they won't touch a player that's a little older. That's probably had to adjust. COVID and stuff had guys staying at school longer. NIL has guys staying at school longer. So I think if you really stay true to that, you're limiting the pool that you're picking from. I think sometimes we have to ask yourself, you're trying to get this guy for 12 years, which is, if you're looking for that, it's a small percentage, or you're looking for one contract and then hopefully more. So it's an interesting topic. It's one we constantly discuss. There's pluses and minuses to both sides. Having a young guy that you think you can develop and is already a good player, and then a guy who's a little more battle tested, been through a little more, and it's an interesting conversation.
How's McCaffrey doing from a health standpoint?
He's doing great. Christian's doing really well, and I think was real frustrated with the way last season went, and doing everything in his possible as he did in preparation for last year. And we're hoping CMC's out there going to have a tremendous year. If he's healthy, he will have a tremendous year. That's just what he does.
Expectation that he'll be ready for the off-season programs?
I think so. I think at least parts of it. We'll be judicious and follow the medical folks' advice on that. But Christian's, he's done a great job doing the rehab. He's tireless. If anything, you got to say whoa to Christian. And as my friend Mike Tomlin, it's a lot better to have to say whoa than it is to say sick him. So Christian is a whoa guy, and because he's going to do everything possible to give himself a chance.
John, the personnel department has gone through a lot of changes both in and out the last few years. Last year, you guys had, one of your strongest drafts in recent memory and a lot of potential starters. Was there maybe a change that you guys had with the approach with you guys coming in, or do you guys still have a similar approach that you've had in years past?
Very similar approach. I think if anything, just, Kyle and I have worked together a long, long time, and so, just walking through the halls, I was just at a restaurant, ran into D'Amico Ryans and Bobby Slowick right before him, and Mike McDaniel over there. All these guys that have been with us over the years, and personnel people, Adam Peters, And so a lot of people contributed a lot to really refining a process that we work by, and we always are tweaking it, trying to make it better. So I think if anything, when you have some form of continuity, and we've had that, it allows you to have systems, challenge them, test them, what's working, what's not, and continue to hone in and always try to get better. You never stay the same, so you always are trying to get better.
Is there a health update on Brandon Aiyuk? There was also a report from the Combine that teams are poking around, interested in trading for him. Is there any interest in
that typically happens with really good players. I remember, I think 2 years ago, having similar conversations. You get calls, and you always listen to calls. And, I think since Kyle and I've been here, we've been, certainly a top 5, I believe, number 2 cash spending team. In the last 5 years, I think or 4 years, going into the 4th year, I think we're the 4th highest cash spending team. So at some point you have to reset a little bit, or at least recalibrate. You can't just keep pressing the pedal. And I think there's some good that can come out of it. We need to get younger. I think we're the oldest team in football, trying to make a run at the deal last year, and I think it's good to constantly get younger. Our draft class last year was a great move towards that. We'll have 4 picks in the top 100. If the comp picks happen like we see it, that's always a calculation. We'll have 10 picks overall, and we're excited about adding more youth to a great core of players that we already have.
We asked you about Deebo last month. You said you're not interested in moving on from a good player. Since then, he's requested a trade.
Yeah.
What's the latest with him?
Yeah, still not interested, Grant, but along those lines of the financial constraints and some conversations we've had with Deebo, it's something, we've been forthright with that. We're on good terms with Deebo. I think, he's asked for a fresh start, and, I think we're going to honor that. Don't like seeing great players, and he is a great player. He's, I think often one of my favorite draft picks in my time. This guy's just he makes plays, and he makes game-changing plays. And, everything's good, but I think at some point time happens, and he asked for that. We don't always, there's contracts and things, but, it probably makes sense. So we're at least allowing him to look, and we're having conversations. We'll see where that goes.
John, draft football, do you see it more defensive heavy, offensive heavy? Are there pockets in there? Do you feel like there's a sweet spot maybe in the draft? What is your overall viewpoint?
Yeah, I think a lot of good players. You always get concerned. Someone was talking earlier about the landscape of college football. These guys are being offered tremendous amounts of money to go back to school. And last I remember, school's pretty fun. It's and so I think a lot of guys are taking that route, and they're being incentivized. So then you wonder, is this going to really hurt our draft? And maybe in the late rounds it has. But the encouraging thing is I start to look, and we're still right in the thick of the process. There's a lot of good football players. Some could argue, are there the impact top-end players that there have been in past drafts? I don't know. We're not drafting, that high. But I think there's a lot of good football players across the board. There are some stronger positions than others, but there's a lot of good football players, and so we're encouraged by that.
Is this the week that you expect to start getting maybe a little bit more clarity on Greenlaw, Hufanga, just through conversations as to whether or not you might be able to bring them back?
Yeah, those guys are fantastic players. Of course, we have interest in bringing them back, and we'll work our tails off to try to make that happen. Whether it does, can't tell you that, but I think in the near future here, things are kicking off. So, yeah, we've been in contact with them, and their representatives will continue to be.
What's the most challenging part of a situation like Deebo's, where it's a good player who requests a trade? What's the most challenging aspect of a situation like that?
Love. There's a lot of love there. There's a lot of respect there. There's a lot of shared experiences. So to let that go, that's difficult. But like I said, time happens, and if it makes sense for both sides, you at least give it a chance. And so that's where we're at.
Did he explain why he wanted a fresh start?
Yeah, but I'm not. Those are personal conversations, and like I said, everybody's on good terms, and hopefully we find a great place. Then we'll have to make a decision if we don't. But I could say there's been a lot of interest around the league.
Is there a scenario where he actually does come back?
There's always a scenario. I've learned that as well. Yeah.
Last month, you mentioned the possibility of bringing back Javon Hargrave. Is that still a possibility in your eyes, and do you view defensive tackle as a priority this offseason?
It is, but I would tell you, I think the D tackle market's going to be, those guys, it's a premium position, and they typically do well. And even Javon, who's coming off the tricep, I think he's well on his way to being healthy, and I think it'd be a robust market, but we'll see. And we've had good discussions with Javon. When we kind of talked about the transaction we were going to make, that we'd be interested in a scenario where he comes back, and hopefully we can be involved in that. We'll see.
John, you mentioned prospects that are good players, but maybe have more developmental upside versus maybe impact prospects that can come in right away. With the quarterback potentially having a big number going forward, does that kind of influence how you see those two and what you might lean more toward in drafting?
One more time on that question.
Yeah, like you mentioned the players that are good players but have more developmental upside.
Yes.
Versus impact players that you might draft. With the quarterback having a big number, does that maybe influence how you see that, which way you go more because of that?
Yeah, the one thing I've learned in this deal is everything is tied to everything, particularly when you're talking about a position like the quarterback position and the effect it has on your entire team. Now, they can lift your entire team, but it can affect your entire team, and we'll see where that goes. But our intention is to have a really good team around him, whatever that entails, but it does have an impact, to say the least. Yeah.
Do you have any Tush comments on the latest legislation with the Tush push?
On the Tush push, you know what? This is my first year on the competition committee, so I sat in there and I just listened. I never want something that found it could, because credit to the Eagles and congratulations to the Eagles. As hard as it is to say, respect. They had a tremendous season. We're a tremendous team right down to the end, and so a lot of good people in that organization, and I congratulate them. They're fantastic at that play, and a big part of me so I don't want to speak out of both sides of my mouth. I've always been a proponent. Well, if you don't like it, stop it. But I have my own feelings on that play, and I long have. It's not real pretty to watch. I think back to my playing days, and I think that might have made me do things that I wouldn't be proud of, because if they aren't going to stop it, I'll stop it. That kind of trickles into players that have a certain mentality's head, and I'm just being truthful there. And so I hope that's never the case. The competition committee, I've been really impressed the way they go about things. You go right down the line. Let's talk about it, for the game of football, the aesthetics of it. But let's talk about it first and foremost is always health and safety. And I think there's probably not enough significant data to show that, that a lot of people are getting injured on this play. There is, I think, a fear that something serious could happen on that play just because of the dynamics of it. And I think part of everyone involved job is to make tough decisions before that ever happens. And so that's something they're weighing. There's great discussion, and I think that discussion will go to the owners meeting in Florida here in the coming weeks, and should be interesting, and a lot of strong opinions on both sides.
All right, guys, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, guys.